This is a rebuild video for a two-cylinder Yanmar diesel tractor. I've got the data plate up here, and this video has been a real pain in my backlog. The real reason I haven't been able to upload any videos lately is just haven't had the motivation because this video needed to get processed, and it's just a lot of video roll. So this is going to be the first video probably of three, and this is going to be removing the engine and prepping it for the engine stand. This, I would say, is a very simple motor to rebuild, especially for a diesel motor. It's the first time I've rebuilt a diesel motor, and I've rebuilt some small engines and had my hands in some, uh, vehicle motors. And this was pretty easy. So if you're feeling confident, if you have some mechanical skills, maybe if this is the first motor you've rebuilt, I would not be too hesitant to give it a shot. I'm going to put a link to Matt's shop, and he has a much better breakdown. He's got all of the technical data that you'll need for rebuilding this motor. And if you have to do any of the gauging for ordering the new pistons, I had the rebuild kit given to me along with buying this tractor, so I didn't really have to deal with any of that. Matt's shop, the link will be in the description. I honestly wasn't even going to make this video, but there's going to be some stuff in this video that maybe he hadn't put in his when it comes to reassembly. I took tons of video, tons of pictures, and that was really helpful for me when it went to reassembly because you just forget. It takes quite a while to end up doing this, especially if this isn't your full-time job. It might take you a few days or weeks to put this back together. And just having as many pictures as possible, see the orientation and the placement, remember how you got things in and out of here. So we'll just we'll carry on with this. And yeah, he's a really great content creator, really easy to listen to. So the first thing I did here was remove this fan shroud or radiator mount, I guess you might call it. When pulling a motor, you want to save as much time as possible and disassemble, you know, the least amount as possible while still making it easy enough to get the motor out. I didn't remove the hood or anything like that for whatever reason. I couldn't even get the bolts off to remove the hood. I don't know if there's some special sort of trick to that. But I tried getting the motor out without removing this mounting bracket, and it wasn't happening. You don't have to remove the hydraulic pump, but you do have to remove those lines, and you're going to see in a sec here. They're actually pretty easy to get off. Obviously the radiator's got to come out first, and you don't have to pull the fan right away. There are mounting bolt locations, threaded holes that you can run a metric. I can't remember the exact size, but you just find a metric bolt that'll fit into these holes, and you can use those for lifting the engine out. I actually just used a cable underneath the water pump on the front there. There is a mounting. You can see the hole there for the for getting another engine lift location. And then this is the suck line for the hydraulic pump. You can disconnect those. Keep all your bolts as organized. I use Ziploc bags, separate Ziploc bags for everything. Keep everything really organized. You can see there's hose clamps. It switches to soft lines when it gets back here, so you can undo those. I definitely should have pressure washed this before, but I didn't have a pressure washer at the time, so it just kind of is what it is. Once you pull those off and get those out of the way, there are a few bolts in here. Putting this back together is a real pain, actually, getting all those frame bolts lined up. So this is the speedometer cable that runs up, or maybe it's the tack, Yeah, it'd be the tack cable that runs up under the dash. You want to disconnect that. This one's just held together with some farmer's wire, but it still works fine. And that runs up to the front here, so that's where this cable connects. And again, I really should have pressure washed this off beforehand. Oven cleaner works as a great degreaser. I don't know if I have any video of me hosing this down and pressure washing it once I did get my pressure washer. Okay, so this was one of the things that was holding me up from getting the motor out of the frame rails. The drain plug for the frickin' was it the drain plug for the oil? I think it was. So if you want to pull that out beforehand, you'll see a little bit later in the video. I actually was able to kind of sneak it through there, but it would have made my life easier if I would have pulled that off beforehand. And that little thing on the bottom there is just oil pan heater. This is a decompression lever. Pull all those linkages apart. There again is that would be that the tack cable or speedometer. This is me taking the motor from my driveway over to my little workshop here. And, you don't need much really, but you do need certain tools, and an engine stand is one of those tools that you're definitely going to need. So here, so a little bit backstory in this motor. This motor was sitting for several years before I got my hands on it. I assume it got parked because this clutch probably came apart and probably wasn't running very well either. So they just parked it, sat for a very long time, I'm assuming. It was all full of water. So I ended up ordering another used clutch, and yeah, that just completely flew apart there. And then, yeah, hose this down as often as many times as possible. I heard something about the WD-40. The formula got changed because some sort of environmental stuff. I don't know if the new stuff's as good as the old stuff, but nevertheless, get your hands on whatever penetrant you can. Hose it down. I used a few cans on this, as you can probably tell. Here's me pulling the clutch assembly off, and everything just fell right apart. It was just completely disintegrated. And you'll get to see how I align that. There's actually the shaft in the transmission is what I use for the alignment tool, so you don't need an alignment tool. You can just buy used clutch. Pulling the dowel pins off here. I can't remember if the used clutch that I bought, I'm pretty sure it came with the other dowel pins, but you just might want to save them just to be on the safe side in case the new clutch didn't come with them. The alignment dowels. And yeah, okay, so you see here, water found its way in through the exhaust, which was a fairly small hole. The but just sitting for that many years, and it didn't. I guess it didn't really have any oil in it, and that's all water. It's not gas; it's water. There's a little bit of oil in it, really not much though. And you can see the mark of the beast there. Do not. Those grips are nice. I don't know why they don't put those grips. I don't know if they have patented those grips or what the deal is. Do not use Fram filters. There's the whole thing on it. YouTube it. Do not use them. And I'm pulling out, I think one of the pyrometers or something, one of the sensors here. Just pulling all the sensors off, pulling the hydraulic pump out now, pulling that tack cable off, and just doing some little disassembly just to make things a little bit easier to manage once I get it on the engine stand, which you'll see in a little bit here. This is the pulley. That had the PTO, front PTO insert on it. I thought I should have better shot of that. Pulling off some of the air cleaner, alternator. And you'll see that in a lot better detail in the final video on reassembly. exactly the position, orientation, and everything when I put it back together. There's that front PTO insert that bolts right onto the pulley there. And those nuts. So the front nut is a little bit smaller than the back nut. The front nut, I think, is 2 inch or smaller. The back nut is bigger than 2 inch. So, I mean, clearly, I'm not going to have any luck here with that breaker bar. Um, but, I had to give it a try anyways, right? And I was going to wait to get it on the engine stand anyways, obviously, because it would have given me more stability. But I needed to get this flywheel off, and I didn't have a big enough socket. And I went to try to I couldn't find a big enough socket. So I just kind of gave up and I ground this nut down to under 2 inch. When you get to these massive sockets, you don't have to be really perfect anyways. So I just ground it till it was under 2 inches. And seeing as how I didn't have a 1 inch drive impact, this thing was really on there. I did try quite a bit beforehand to try to get this off there. It just wasn't happening. So I ended up taking some 1 inch flat stock and making a little T-bar out of it, which you'll see some pictures. I've got some. I've got like uh, just a stream of pictures at the very end. I'll show you just a few orientations here. But I built this little T-bar out of some 1 inch bar, and it's a 2 inch socket there, I believe, and it works incredibly well. A couple mall hammers, and that's how I ended up getting the front socket off as well. It's really, honestly, just the way to do it. It's the way I would do it now. So this, I didn't leave the video. I didn't leave the video of me screwing this up. So some of the ways that you'll remove flywheels and pulleys and those sorts of things are just by driving a bolt in these little bolt holes on the flywheel, which is what I attempted first, and I ended up snapping one of them off because that's not actually how that works. You do not drive the bolt in those holes. You make a puller and you just insert the bolts to keep the puller in place to pull against the flywheel, and you push against the crankshaft, and that's how the flywheel comes off. It took me a couple hours. I lost a couple of hours there by breaking that bolt off by trying to drive those bolts all the way in and push up against the. Well, you can't. It just ends up getting tighter and tighter and tighter until you just snap the bolt. But once I got that off, I was able to get on my engine stand, and then that's pretty much the end of this video. The next video is going to be. I think I get into heads. The heads on this were nasty because the water was just came in through the exhaust, just filled up the intake. Sorry, yeah, the filled up the manifold and just rusted. The valves were just nasty, and I couldn't really find uh, new valves, so I just ended up. You'll see in the next video, but I just ended up just getting a ton of lapping compound and a drill and just reseating the valves just by spending a couple hours with the drill and some lapping and just a ton of lapping compound, and I was able to save the valves and it runs great. Really the only problem I'm having now is the injectors. It runs great though, other than a little bit of knock on startup.